howls across the empty valley. Dust swirls like a ghost in the fading sun. And there, standing alone, is a man with a cloak in his hand, a cloak that once belonged to a legend, the prophet Elijah. He kneels beside a river that rages like thunder. He whispers a name, God of Elijah. Then he strikes the water. The river splits apart. A path of dry ground opens before him, and at that moment, heaven watches. A new prophet has risen. His name is Elisha. Years earlier, Elisha was just a farmer, a humble man guiding 12 oxen across the field. The sun burned bright. The earth was hard, and his hands were rough with labor. Then a shadow fell over the field. He looked up and saw Elijah, the man of God, walking straight toward him. Without a word, Elijah took off his prophet's cloak and placed it on Elisha's shoulders. The moment the fabric touched him, Elisha froze. Something powerful filled his heart. It was like fire, but holy, pure, divine. He knew instantly this was a calling, a call from heaven itself. Elisha ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said, "then I will come with you." Elijah simply replied, "Go back, but think of what I have done to you." Elisha turned. He burned his plow. He sacrificed his oxen. He left behind his life and followed the prophet of God. From that day forward, he served Elijah faithfully, not as a servant, but as a son learning from his spiritual father. For years he watched the miracles of Elijah, the fire from heaven, the rain that ended drought, the power that defeated kings, and when the time came, Elisha would carry that same power, but even greater. It began on a quiet morning. Elijah knew his time on earth was ending. He turned to Elisha and said, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha refused. "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." They walked together, from Gilgal to Bethel, from Bethel to Jericho, and finally to the river Jordan. At every stop, other prophets whispered, "Do you know that the Lord will take your master from you today?" Elisha nodded. "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah rolled up his cloak and struck the Jordan River. The water divided, and both men walked across on dry ground. On the other side, Elijah turned to his student. "Tell me," he said, "what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" Elisha took a deep breath. His voice trembled. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah smiled. "You have asked a difficult thing," he said, "but if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours." Then suddenly, the wind began to roar. The sky split open with fire. A chariot of blazing flame appeared, drawn by horses of fire. Elijah was lifted up, carried by the whirlwind, into heaven itself. Elisha cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." The cloak of Elijah fell from the sky and landed at Elisha's feet. He picked it up, trembling. He walked back to the Jordan River, and with faith burning inside him, he struck the water and shouted, "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" The water parted once again. The same power, the same fire, the same God, now with Elisha. The prophets, watching from afar, gasped. "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha," they cried. The people of Jericho came to him and said, "Our city is good, but the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful." Elisha said, "Bring me a new bowl and put salt in it." They brought it to him. He walked to the spring of water. He threw in the salt and declared, "This is what the Lord says. I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unfruitful." And instantly, the water turned pure. The land flourished. The people rejoiced. A prophet's word had changed an entire city. But this was only the beginning, because soon Elisha would perform miracles that even kings would witness, and armies would fear. The sun rose over a small village in Israel. A widow sat beside her empty jars, her face pale with worry. Her husband had once served the prophets, but now he was gone, and the debt collectors were coming to take her 2 sons as slaves. Desperate, she ran to Elisha. Her voice trembled. "My husband is dead, and you know he feared the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my boys." Elisha looked at her gently. "What do you have in your house?" She whispered. "Nothing, except a small jar of olive oil." He smiled. "Go, borrow as many empty jars as you can from your neighbors. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside, shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour oil into all the jars." She blinked. It sounded impossible, but she obeyed. Inside her home, she took the small jar, tilted it over the first empty vessel, and oil began to flow. Her eyes widened. The oil did not stop. Jar after jar, it filled to the brim. "Bring me another," she cried. Her sons searched every corner, every neighbor's house. Finally, they said, "There are no more jars left." The oil stopped. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. The next day, Elisha said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." A miracle in a jar, a home restored, and a mother's faith rewarded. Far north in Shunem, a wealthy woman often saw Elisha pass by her home. Each time she invited him to eat. Soon she said to her husband, "I know this man is a holy man of God. Let's build him a small room on the roof with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp for him." So they did. Elisha rested there whenever he passed through. One day he wanted to bless her. He asked, "You have been so kind to us. What can be done for you?" She said, "I have a home among my people. I need nothing." But his servant Gehazi whispered, "She has no son, and her husband is old." Elisha smiled. He called her to the doorway, then said, "About this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." Her eyes filled with disbelief. "No, my lord, don't mislead your servant." But a year later, she was holding a baby boy, the promise of God fulfilled. Years passed. The boy grew strong and joyful, until one morning in the fields he cried out, "My head! My head!" He was carried home and laid on his mother's lap, and by noon he stopped breathing. Her heart shattered, but she did not call for mourners. She did not give up. She laid the boy on Elisha's bed, saddled a donkey, and rode as fast as she could to find the man of God. When she saw Elisha from a distance, she cried out, "Did I ask you for a son? Did I not say, 'Don't raise my hopes'?" Elisha's face turned pale. He handed his staff to Gehazi and said, "Run ahead, lay my staff on the boy's face." But the mother clung to Elisha. "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So he followed her. When they reached the house, the child lay still on the bed. Elisha closed the door and prayed. Then he stretched himself upon the child, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The boy's body grew warm. Elisha walked back and forth, praying again. Then he stretched out once more. Suddenly, the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called the mother. She fell at his feet, weeping in awe and gratitude. She held her son tightly, the child who had returned from death. Later, during a famine, Elisha returned to Gilgal. The prophets gathered around him, hungry and weak. He said, "Put on the large pot and cook stew for these men." One of them went out to gather herbs and found a wild vine. He filled his cloak with wild gourds, sliced them into the pot, but they were poisonous. As they ate, they cried out, "Man of God, there's death in the pot." Elisha calmly said, "Bring me some flour." He threw it into the pot and said, "Serve it to the people." They ate again, and the food was healed. No harm came to anyone. Not long after, another man came from Baal-Shalisha bringing 20 small loaves of barley bread and some fresh grain. Elisha said, "Give it to the people to eat." His servant gasped, "How can I set this before 100 men?" Elisha replied, "Give it to the people. The Lord says, they will eat and have some left over." He obeyed, they ate, and there was plenty left over, just as the Lord had said. Faith, obedience, and miracles, again and again. But Elisha's greatest miracles were still to come. Far away, in the powerful land of Aram, lived a man of fame and honor. His name was Naaman, commander of the king's army, brave, strong, victorious. But behind his shining armor was pain. He suffered from leprosy. One day, a young Israelite servant girl in his home said softly, "If only my master could see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would heal him." Naaman's heart stirred. He went to the king, gathered treasures of gold and silver, and set out for Israel. When he reached Elisha's house, he expected the prophet to come out, to lift his hands, to call upon his God with fire and thunder. But Elisha did not even meet him. He sent a messenger. "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River," the message said, "and your flesh will be restored." Naaman's face turned red with anger. He shouted, "Are not the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Why must I wash in this muddy river?" He turned to leave, but his servants spoke gently. "My father, if the prophet had asked you to do something great, wouldn't you have done it? How much more, when he says, 'Wash and be clean'?" Naaman stood at the Jordan's edge. He took a deep breath. He dipped once, twice, again and again, 7 times. And when he rose from the water, his skin was smooth, pure, new, like the skin of a child. He was healed. He was whole. He returned to Elisha and said, "Now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel." The man who once came proud and broken left humble and free. Later, the prophets were building a larger meeting place by the Jordan River. As they cut wood, one man swung his axe, and the iron head flew off, splashing into the deep water. He cried out, "Oh no, my lord, it was borrowed." Elisha walked over calmly. "Where did it fall?" he asked. The man pointed. Elisha cut a small stick, threw it into the water, and right before their eyes the heavy iron floated up. "Lift it out," Elisha said. The man reached into the river, trembling. Even the smallest problem mattered to God. Soon, war returned to the land. The king of Aram planned secret attacks against Israel, but every time Elisha warned the king of Israel where the enemy would strike. The king of Aram was furious. "Who among us is betraying me?" he shouted. His servant replied, "No one, my lord. It's Elisha, the prophet in Israel. He tells the king the very words you speak in your bedroom." The king growled, "Find him. Capture him." That night Aram's army surrounded the city of Dothan. Horses, chariots, soldiers, a sea of steel and fire. When Elisha's servant awoke, he saw the vast army and cried out, "Oh, my master, what shall we do?" Elisha smiled. "Do not be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then he prayed, "Lord, open his eyes that he may see." The servant blinked, and suddenly his eyes were opened. All around the hills, horses and chariots of fire surrounded Elisha. Heaven's army stood ready. Elisha prayed again, "Strike them with blindness." And instantly, the enemy stumbled, unable to see. He led them straight to Samaria, where the king of Israel surrounded them. When their eyes were opened again, they realized they were trapped. The king asked, "Shall I kill them, my father?" Elisha shook his head. "No. Give them food and water, and send them back to their master." And when they returned home, the raiders stopped attacking Israel. The prophet had won a battle without a single sword. Years passed. Elisha grew old, his hair white, his voice soft, but his spirit still strong. When he fell sick, King Jehoash of Israel came to him, weeping. "My father, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel," he cried, the same words Elisha once shouted when Elijah was taken up. Elisha said, "Take a bow and arrows." The king obeyed. "Open the east window," Elisha said. He placed his hands over the king's hands. "Shoot." The arrow flew into the distance. Elisha whispered, "The Lord's arrow of victory over Aram." Even on his deathbed, his faith spoke life. When Elisha died, they buried him in a tomb. But one day, as men were burying another body nearby, they saw raiders coming. In fear, they threw the body into Elisha's tomb. The moment the dead man's body touched Elisha's bones, he came back to life. He stood on his feet. Even in death, the prophet's faith carried power. Elisha's story began with a farmer and a cloak. It ended with miracles that shook nations. He showed that God's power was not only for the mighty, but for the humble, for widows, for soldiers, for kings, for anyone who believed. He didn't chase fame or fortune. He just listened and obeyed. And through that obedience, heaven touched earth again and again. Faith turned oil into abundance. Faith turned death into life. Faith opened the unseen world of angels, and today, that same faith still speaks. Maybe your miracle hasn't come yet. Maybe your jar feels empty, your heart heavy. But the God of Elisha still moves, still hears, still answers. Because faith never dies. The prophet's cloak once fell to the ground, but his story still lives on. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Because the God who split the river for Elisha can still make a way for you. Hold on to faith. Your miracle might already be closer than you think.